Hello guys, this is International Master Alex Astaneh with Chessfactor, and I'm here to bring you the second part of the Italian series, where the focus this time around will be on the position that I'm just placing on the board now. After bishop to c4, what we focused on in the first big part of the series is the classical Italian with the move bishop to c5. However, the black player here has another option which is just as popular at the highest levels and also at the club level, and that is to develop his knight to f6. Here we already talked about the various options in the introductory video on the Italian series, so take a look at that if you want to see what we'll be covering. But I can tell you now that the two main options here for white are the move d3. This is the absolute main option. Simply defending the pawn on e4, and the other option is also that's quite popular is knight to g5 here, taking advantage of the fact that with the knight on f6 the queen is actually blocked from defending the g5 square. So these are quite different positions from the kind of positions we might get in the classical Italian continuation that we saw in the first half. For this introductory video, I actually want to show you a little move that is a part of the four knights Italian, but that is not regarded to be a very good move, and we're going to see exactly why now. That move is the defense of the pawn with knight to c3. So this move, I just want to say, first of all, it can be arrived at via a couple of different move orders. So the first move order, let me place the position back. After knight f3, knight to c6, white can actually start with the move knight to c3, and here after knight to f6, then play the move bishop to c4. Alternatively, the more common move order is the one that I showed first. Now, regardless, when we get to this position, the reason why this isn't very popular at the highest levels is because black has the move knight takes pawn on e4. At first, this move might seem like an unplayable move because the knight is actually defending the pawn. But the point is that if white captures the knight with his own knight, now the knight and the bishop can be forked with the move pawn to d5. And after this, well, it turns out that white doesn't have anything better than bishop to d3, and black recovers his piece. Now bishop takes e4, and now black plays bishop to d6, defending the pawn on e5 and getting ready to play the move pawn to f5. So for example, after white goes castle, black will first castle, and soon, if white does nothing to prevent it, black will push his pawn to f5 and get a good grip on the center. The problem that white has here to try and prove an advantage is that black just has this nice central pawn on e5 and very comfortable development and a safe king. So because of this, this position is not considered to be a threat to black, and that's why it's not very popular. I also, however, want to include one more thing in this quick discussion on the four knights Italian, and that is a gambit known as Noa's Gambit. So let's get the position back from the very start. Now, in this position, after the moves e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, remember, whether white begins with knight c3 or bishop to c4, we can arrive at the same position. Bishop c4, knight f6, and now, as mentioned in the beginning of this video, d3 is the most common way of defending the pawn, and that is because after knight c3, we see black has this strong move, knight takes e4. Now, Noa's Gambit is to say, well, if we take this knight, black is going to fork us and he's going to recover the piece anyway. So instead, let's take this pawn with the bishop so that after king takes bishop, knight takes knight, well, there is no longer a fork after the move pawn to d5. As we can see, there is no longer a bishop. Now, the reason I want to cover Noa's Gambit is because a lot of club players mistakenly play into this position as white, and a lot of players from the black side are afraid to allow this possibility as black. In fact, black is almost winning from this position. This may seem a little bit strange because the king on f7 is apparently vulnerable. It has lost one of its pawns. And on the other hand, white's king will be able to castle into safety. However, the reason why this position is really very, very good for black is because the weaknesses around the light squares mainly of the black position, I say around the light squares because this missing pawn is a light squared pawn. The weaknesses around the light squares are not a big deal at all for black because white is missing his light squared bishop while black has his light squared bishop. So the light squares are firmly in black's control. In the meantime, black has one major asset, which is the bishop pair, and another even more significant asset, which is this very strong center. So with these two pawns in the absolute center of the board, black will be able to push them and harass white's knights and make the white position feel very uncoordinated and the white pieces struggling for good squares. In the meantime, black will solve his only potential issue, which is the slightly weakened king. After, let's say, a move like knight check, black will simply drop the king back, eventually kick out the knight, and fix the issue with this inactive rook. In other words, black's trumps in this position are far more substantial than white's, and this is worth knowing. So basically, don't play the Noa Gambit as white, and if you do face it as black, then be happy with the position rather than fearful. So that's it for this video on the 4 Knights Italian. It's a rare choice and nothing to fear. And hope you enjoyed the video and see you in the next one.